يا أيها الذين آمنوا اتقوا الله وقولوا. My dearest brothers and sisters, the true crisis we have nowadays in this day and age, whether within the family or in society in general, it's ethical. It's about ethics and behavior. The mass majority of issues we have as family members, also as members of the society, more or less, most of it is about ethics and discipline and behavior. And we're not any exception. Even in a Muslim world where we think sometimes that we have stronger bonds, etc. If I mention, for instance, divorce, and I don't want to mention the names of the countries because it's not about the countries, it's about the phenomena. It's everywhere. Every country, more or less the same thing. But I'm going to just share some figures with you, regardless of the name of the country. In one of the countries, every 10 minutes, divorce takes place. Every 10 minutes. And if I were to mention the country, you will be surprised, which means every single day, 144 divorces take place. In another country, there's 60% of divorce take place within marriages. So which means when you get married, 60% chance you're going to end in divorce. Very scary. In some other statistics, every 2 marriages, 1 end in divorce. 50%. Now, the thing is, when you go and study this matter in the United Kingdom, the rate of divorce has fallen and dropped down. You might think this is a good thing. It's not a good thing, because the reason why divorce has fallen and dropped down is because there are less marriages. People don't get married as much as before. So because the number of marriages dropped down, obviously divorce dropped down. Also, there's another reason I don't want to go into now because that's not the topic. So for us as Muslims, refraining from marriage is a disaster because we can't have relationships with opposite sex outside marriage. It's haram. Zina is haram. So for us to have less marriages, that is disaster, which means there's more haram, more zina. So the solution is not to refrain from getting married. The solution is to learn how to keep your marriage healthy and strong. So going back to what I was talking about in Arabic earlier, our major problem within families and society is ethical. It's about al-akhlaq and al-adab. It's about discipline. It's about discipline. That's why when you open Al-Quran Al-Kareem and you start reading from the beginning to the end, you're going to find Allah Jalla Jalaluhu taking so much care about al-akhlaq and ethics. Surat Al Hujurat is also called Surat Al-Akhlaq, the surah of ethics. Some scholars call Surat Al Hujurat Surat Al-Akhlaq, the chapter of ethics and discipline. And it's true when you look at Surat Al Hujurat from the very beginning, Ya ayyuha alladhina amanu la tuqaddimu bayna yaday Allahi wa rasulih, all the way going through these verses of this surah, you can see Allah Azza wa Jalla is establishing ethics and al-akhlaq, morals, principles, behavior, discipline, because truly that is what is going wrong within our families and societies. Now in Surat Al Hujurat, at least there are 16 commandments in Surat Al Hujurat. 16 commandments. Very important. When you look at Surat Al Hujurat, ikhwani, and I recommend that you go and study Surat Al Hujurat. Wallahi, ikhwani, it will fix a lot of our behavior as spouses, as children, as family members in general, and as society members as well. Surah Al Hujurat. And I want to focus today only about some of these commandments that Allah Azza wa Jal has established in Surah Al Hujurat, the surah of ethics. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said, Ya ayyuha alladhina amanu ijtanibu kathiran min al-dhann. Inna ba'da al-dhanni ithm. Most of family conflicts and issues and problems comes from this matter of adhan, suspicion. Suspicion. Very powerful tool of a shaitan to destroy families and societies. Ya ayyuha alladhina amanu ijtanibu. Stay away from adhan. Stay away from a lot of suspicion. And then he said, Inna ba'd adhan. When he said to avoid, he said avoid a lot of suspicion. Why? Because some. He didn't say a lot, he said some. إن بعض الظن إثم ومن حام حول الحمى أوشك أن يقع فيه. If you want to be in the safe side, stay in the middle. Don't go too close to the border. So because there are a lot of suspicions that are very bad for us, not every suspicion, because suspicion is a tool that we have as humans. If we know how to utilize suspicion, we can benefit from it. Because sometimes you have to have this suspicion. Allah created this tool within us to protect ourselves. So it is not a bad thing, but the bad thing about it is when you use it in the wrong way. The Prophet said, كَفَى بِالْمَرْءِ كَذِبًا أَنْ يُحَدِّثَ بِكُلِّ مَا سَمِعَ. When you speak about everything you hear, there is a lot of suspicion there, and that is ithm, that is wrongdoing. So if you want to stay safe, stay in the middle. So because you know some of the suspicion is bad, try to avoid it altogether, except when it is very beneficial. And how would you know that suspicion is beneficial? Is when the Sharia allows you, first of all, to use suspicion. Also, when your intellect, so it's not your desires, it's not your emotions, it's not your ahassis and masha'ir, no, it's all about your intellect. You have to be suspicious in this. So we can use that. Otherwise, it is very, very bad tool. And as I said to you, many divorces take place because of this suspicion thing. Doubts is a tool that a shaitan can use against to destroy your relationships with your people. إِنَّ بَعْضَ الظَّنِّ إِثْمٍ. For Allah Azza wa Jal to warn us against suspicion, He said it is ithm. Ithm, what is ithm? Means something you get sin for. So it's not just a bad thing, it's actually there is a sin behind it. So imagine, it's not just morally you have to stay away from suspicion. No, even Islamically you have to stay away from suspicion, from a dhann. Why? Because suspicion destroys relationships. When you start having these doubts based on your emotions about your missus, about your wife, or about your husband, about your children, about people around you. Even brothers sometimes don't trust each other. After suspicion, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala spoke about another tool, very dangerous tool. It's called التجسس. ولا تجسسوا means do not spy on each other. Many divorces started, ikhwani, from going into your husband's phone, or going into your missus' phone, or your children's phones. Some brothers think they are protective, they want to protect their children, but actually you are destroying your children. When you, every single minute, give me your phone, give me your phone, give me your phone, and you start checking your children's phone every single minute, you're actually teaching them how to have this disease of doubts. Yes, there are ways, alhamdulillah, how to discipline your children. No doubt, we have that responsibility towards our children and towards our beloved ones. But the solution is not to act against the Quran, because you are putting all this disease into their heads from the very beginning. Maybe they're not even thinking about anything. But you can be vigilant. Definitely you need to be vigilant in a very smart way, so you don't offend your children while you're trying to protect them. Then when you see something clear, or you have genuine suspicion, then you can address that in a good way as well. Just the way how you treat yourself sometimes, because brothers, sometimes we're very soft with ourselves. You know that there are a lot of things you're doing wrong. You know that. We all know this about ourselves. And we are so gentle with ourselves. But when it comes to our children, or our spouses, our brothers, we're too harsh. That's kind of being double standard. Yes, if you're harsh on yourself as well, then at least we know that's your way of life, and then it's something you can correct. But to be harsh on others and you be soft towards yourself, I think there's something we have to correct in that. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said, وَلَا تَجَسَّسُوا. Don't spy. وَلَا يَغْتَبْ بَعْضُكُمْ بَعْضًا. Suspicion leads to spying. That's why in Islam it's haram. Even if you know that somebody is doing something wrong in their own home, it's haram to go and spy on them. It's not your business. Make dua for them. If it's something exposed, you can talk to them personally in nice ways. اذهبا إلى فرعون إنه طغى فقولا له قولا لينا. This is Fir'aun. And Allah is saying to Musa and Harun, go to Fir'aun and speak to him gently. Fir'aun, who said, أنا ربكم الأعلى. He said, I'm your Lord. Yet Allah is saying to Musa and Fir'aun and his brother Harun, make sure you speak to Fir'aun in a gentle way. With Fir'aun. So your children, your missus, your husband, your neighbors, your brothers in the masjid, they are not in the level of Fir'aun, for sure. So they deserve gentleness more than Fir'aun. وَلَا يَغْتَبْ بَعْضُكُمْ بَعْضًا. This is another disease, very bad disease. Al-ghiba, backbiting, is another crisis we have inside our homes and in society. And it's bringing a lot of conflicts, and as I said, a lot of divorces and unhealthy relationships come from. And when I say this, because many of us think that divorce is the only bad thing about, or the bad consequence of conflicts. No, there's something sometimes it's worse than divorce, which is having toxic relationship. And that's why, alhamdulillah, from Allah's rahmah subhanahu wa ta'ala, he allowed divorce under some circumstances. Why? Because sometimes divorce has more rahmah and mercy than having a toxic relationship where the relationship is destroying the children and destroying you as well, mentally and physically. So we have to think about these two things together. Divorce as a bad thing, definitely a bad consequence, because it's just a disaster. Also, having a toxic relationship in the house, whether with your spouse, with your children, also is another disaster. So al-ghiba, ikhwani, backbiting, is another major problem that brings a lot of these kind of toxic relationships and divorces. When there is a small conflict, sometimes one of the spouses go and starts backbiting his wife or her husband to others. This is haram. Al-ghiba itself is haram. Al-ghiba itself, backbiting, is haram. In fact, it's a kabira, it's a major sin according to many scholars. Yes, there are some situations or circumstances where you are allowed to backbite. Like when to a judge, for instance, you have a problem with somebody and you go to the court. Of course, you're going to tell your lawyer and the judge what happened with that person. That is allowed. Also, if somebody comes to you and say to you, brother, I want to establish a business with Zayd or Amr, with A or B. Can you advise me? You say, no, I don't advise you to do business with that brother because you can't trust him. Backbiting here is allowed. Why? If you are sadiq, if you are saying the truth, and out of care, you are giving. But the scholar said you can only give what is enough. The information that are enough to the person to refrain from the harm and from the evil. You don't give everything. Now what happens in families, subhanAllah, when there's a conflict, all of your business is exposed to others, to family members, to friends. You can't do this, my sister. You can't do this. And you can't do this, my brother. Your wife's secrets, your husband's secrets, or private life has to stay inside. Even your children. Some parents, subhanAllah, I don't know where our Muslim brothers and sisters get this idea from. It's just because you are a parent, you think that you own that child. You don't own anyone. You can't expose your children to your friends. You're just sitting down, embarrassing your children, speaking about your children to others, to your friends, and your son is there, or your daughter, or even if they are not there. This is considered to be haram, ghiba. You have no right. Our children, our spouses are not assets. They're not our assets. We don't own them. They have their own dignity. We have to protect. In fact, as parents, we have this upon our shoulders to protect each other and to protect our children. So the idea of al-ghiba is very, very bad. And the way how Allah linked suspicion with and doubts with spying and then backbiting is amazing. The way how these three are linked, because one leads to the other. So may Allah Azza wa Jalla, ikhwani, protect us. When you start saying this is how I am, you are fighting for your weaknesses. You will never change. We are able to change our behavior. Otherwise, Allah subhanahu will not say, stay away from this behavior and do such and such. When you start believing that your behavior controls you and you have no control of it, then trust me, brothers and sisters, you're going to die with your weaknesses. We have the ability to change our behavior. We have to. And the biggest evidence for this is that we are responsible for our behavior. So I want everyone to go to Surat Al Hujurat and see how, as I said to you, there are 16 commandments in Surat Al Hujurat. The way how Surah is starting, how it's taking you gradually, step by step, and you act upon that, not just in society, no, in the house, with your spouse, with your children. When Allah says don't backbite, don't think that Allah is talking about outsiders. No, He's talking about your wife, your husband, your children, your parents, your aunt, every single human being, because every human being has their own dignity we have to protect. And you all heard and you saw the news, the girl Sarah who've been brutally killed by family members. On Allahu Akbar, what's happening in society to cause death and torture to your own child. It's insane. So ikhwani, Surat Al Hujurat came to do this for us. Go through it, see how Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is changing our behavior, or commanding us to change our behavior. And may Allah Azza wa Jalla give us the strength to become better, inshallah ta'ala, every day, because that's what we need to do. Not to be perfect, but to be better. Tomorrow I should be better than today. And I have to have in my schedule. And I have in my plan that next week, inshallah, I should be better and this is how it works. And this is one of the reasons why the Quran came gradually within 23 years, because it was changing people's behavior.